This is a continuation regarding the involvement of Ted Bundy in the Flat Tire murders. This podcast series has been discussing the Flat Tire and Canal murders in South Florida in 1975. We have thus far been going in chronological order and recently reached the murder of Elise Rapp on July 30th, 1975, the murders of Miss Rapp and Ronnie Gorlin only a week before, coupled with the statements of two detectives who investigated the murders and their suspicions regarding the involvement of Ted Bundy, warrant a short detour from the chronological discussion into the life and crimes of Ted Bundy. As noted in the earlier podcast, two detectives who investigated the Flat Tire murders of Elise Rapp and Ronnie Gorlin 45 years later still maintain that Ted Bundy was the prime suspect. One of the primary arguments against Bundy's involvement is, of course, his residence in Utah in July of 1975. Bundy was arrested in Utah on August 16, 1975, but his specific activity in Utah in July of that year remains somewhat unclear. I recently discovered an interview with Leslie Knudsen, with whom Ted Bundy had dated in the summer of 1975. Leslie was a divorced mother of a 7-year-old son in her early 30s who was romantically involved with Bundy during the summer of 1975. According to her recollection, Bundy, quote, took off for Colorado, close quote, and, quote, stood me up to go over to Colorado, close quote. According to her, this was one of the reasons she broke up with him. Once she learned of his arrest on the television, she became extremely concerned and the relationship ended. She also noted that she did not ask him what he did when he, quote, stood her up, quote, to go to Colorado. Ted Bundy was suspected in the disappearances of several women in Colorado from March to June 1975, and Ms. Knudsen could be referring to Bundy's excursions to Colorado from Utah through June 30th, 1975, when Shelley K. Robertson, age 24, disappeared from Denver, Colorado. Logistically, driving from Salt Lake City, Utah to Miami, Florida would take approximately 76 hours round trip and would traverse 6 states. A direct flight, at least based upon information in 2020, would take 4.5 hours, with a connecting flight taking around 6 hours. Is it possible that Bundy, who was known for traveling from Utah to Colorado in his Volkswagen Beetle, either drove or flew to South Florida in July 1975? If Bundy had committed both of the Flat Tire murders, he would have had to have stayed in Miami from at least July 22nd, 1975, when Ronnie Gorlin disappeared, through July 30th, 1975, when Elise Rapp was murdered. It appears that while there is no evidence directly placing Bundy in South Florida between July 22nd and July 30th, 1975, this possibility is not entirely foreclosed by the fact that he was living in Utah. Another issue raised by skeptics of Bundy's involvement is Bundy's lack of confession to these crimes. It should be noted, however, that Bundy maintained his innocence in all of his murders until January 1989, when, facing the electric chair, he slowly and methodically began divulging his secrets in a bid to buy more time before his execution. While he did confess to killing 30 women in 7 states, he did not confess to any murders in South Florida. This does not mean, however, that he was not asked about these murders. In fact, the question about his involvement in murders in Miami was directly posed to him, but he denied any involvement. Many believe that Bundy confessed to only a small number of his actual murders. His attempt to delay his execution failed, and he was executed in Florida on January 24, 1989. The interview from Ms. Knudsen indicates that during the summer of 1975, Bundy was absent from Utah, but we cannot place an exact marker on those dates. Is it possible that he left Utah for a week and traveled to Miami? The possibility remains open. One final issue for consideration is why Bundy selected Florida as his destination after escaping from jail in Colorado in December 1977. Geographically, Florida is the farthest state from Washington, where Bundy was originally from. Others believe that he specifically wanted to live in Tallahassee in an attempt to blend in to the college community at Florida State University. This was a community he was familiar with during his early crimes in Washington. Others have speculated that he deliberately chose a state that strongly enforced capital punishment, perhaps as a sort of death wish. But having visited Miami Beach in 1968, there may have been a deeper meaning behind Bundy's decision to select Florida as his final destination. Bundy could not control his murderous impulses, and shortly after arriving in Tallahassee, he once again went on a killing spree. This time, he was captured, convicted, and ultimately executed. We may never know Bundy's whereabouts in July 1975 with exact certainty, but keeping an open mind to the possibility of his involvement, coupled with the statements of experienced detectives, means that he should remain a suspect in the Flat Tire murders. Thank you for listening. Please leave your comments below and I'm happy to answer them. Thanks again.